As the 2024 presidential election campaign heats up, candidates Trump and Biden's handling of immigration is shaping up to be a key topic for voters. Republicans describe the current crisis at the border as an invasion to justify their calls for more militant and restrictive immigration policies. Democrats frame the issue as a humanitarian crisis to support their policies for more lenient and easier pathways to citizenship. They also look for decriminalization of illegal immigrants. Today, some 46 million people living in the United States are immigrants. Of these 46 million, about 10.5 to 12 million are undocumented. The stream of migrants is unlikely to slow down in the coming years as current political and global economic conditions create situations in global South nations that force people to move. U.S. immigration policies over recent decades have been those of tolerated illegality. Rhetorics of immigrant invasion and crackdowns on illegal immigration distract from the fact that the U.S. economy exploits the cheap labor of undocumented immigrants. Immigrant rights activists have been combating narratives that portray immigrants as public safety threats, economic threats, stealing resources such as welfare, and that isolate undocumented immigrants as criminal aliens. In doing so, the social movement has often propped up a model immigrant, one that works hard, contributes to society, and participates in their community. This characterization of undeserving and deserving immigrants fails to protect the most vulnerable migrants, those who can't work, those who don't yet speak English, or those who have criminal backgrounds but could nonetheless continue to contribute to their communities. In these contexts, discussions on immigration are just as relevant as ever, so taking a look at how immigration system currently operates is worthwhile. Immigrants looking to enter the U.S. have a few different legal pathways to consider. The first is through family sponsorship of immigrant visas. This is for people current U.S. citizens, or in some cases green card holders, who are allowed to sponsor their immediate relatives to enter the country on immigrant visas. Some 60% of legal entries come to the U.S. this way. The next largest pathway is employer sponsorship of immigrant visas. Some 14% of immigrants enter the country this way. Immigrants meet with employers who then sponsor their immigrant visas, allowing them to come to the country and work for certain companies. The next largest pathway is refugees and asylum seekers, accounting for 13% of immigrant arrivals. The problem this country has at the moment is that the institutions in place for reviewing cases for asylum seekers are understaffed and underfunded, leaving us with a backlog of about 3 million unresolved cases. Refugees and asylum seekers have a yearly limit set determined by the sitting president of the U.S. at the time. Right now, President Biden has set the limit at 125,000 per year for the years 2022, 2023, and 2024. The lowest limit set since the program was put in place in 1980 was President Trump for the fiscal year 2021 at 15,000. The other pathways also have limits, and those have not been updated since 1990, when the last legislation for these limits was passed. The final pathway immigrants have to consider legally is a diversity visa. This is for countries that send few immigrants to the U.S. And potential immigrants are allowed to apply for a green card lottery in the hopes of being allowed to come to the U.S. legally. Other than legal pathways, many immigrants turn to illegal pathways due to the limits and the complicated immigration system that the U.S. has. Many immigrants use migrant smugglers to help them cross the border. Migrant smugglers will give immigrants forged or fake documents and take them on dangerous journeys to cross the southern border. Estimates on illegal crossings or the size of the migrant smuggling business are impossible to make accurately and are often based on speculation. This is because there's no way to accurately determine numbers that we simply just don't know. You can catch a certain number of illegal migrant smugglers crossing the country, but you'll never know how many you've missed. Illegal pathways to entering the U.S. contribute to the undocumented population in the U.S., but are not actually the leading cause of undocumented migrants in the U.S. Migrants that enter the U.S. legally on visas that then overstay their visas contribute to a little over 60% of undocumented Americans. So the undocumented population consists of about 62% visa overstays who at some point entered the country legally. And then estimates put the amount of illegal entries at 38% of the current undocumented population. In the US right now, there are between 10.5 and 12 million undocumented Americans. So far, the number has actually stayed pretty stable in the past 20 or so years, because even though it might seem like there are thousands of migrants entering the US illegally each year, a lot voluntarily or involuntarily leave the country through deportation or just wanting to go home. Others pass away, and some become naturalized and become citizens, which reduces the tally of undocumented immigrants. Undocumented people living in the U.S. are subject to a variety of vulnerabilities due to their status. Securing jobs is more difficult, and employees can be exposed to exploitation by their employer. Undocumented youth are hit hard by this problem. Those who are allowed to receive a college education are often unable to acquire jobs they would be qualified for based on their degrees. Social stigma around legal status pressures most to be secretive or to not reveal their status as undocumented. Above all, though, undocumented people living in the United States are constantly vulnerable to the threat of deportation. Deportation proceedings can begin in a number of ways. A person might be stopped by ICE agents or Immigration and Customs Enforcement anywhere in the U.S. So routes to deportation typically start with being confronted by ICE or Customs and Border Patrol agents, and this can happen pretty much anywhere in the U.S., often at public transportation or like other places, other areas where Customs and Border Control agents might be, or where ICE can also just stop people like even outside of their homes. But stops like these are most common at the border when people are trying to cross anyway. Agents could then arrest the offending individual and begin the deportation process. Other ways include local law enforcement giving local law enforcement informing ICE of undocumented status of certain people in the community. And then those people can then be stopped by ICE or questioned even at their home. Once arrested, immigrants are sent to a detention center. ICE then determines whether this individual can be deported immediately or if removal proceedings should begin against them in immigration courts. The Department of Homeland Security then determines, then has to prove in court that the person is not a citizen of the U.S. or has violated immigration laws in some way. If the person in question is not a citizen and has violated immigration laws, they have the opportunity to appear in an individual hearing, to apply for citizenship. So after being arrested, then migrants go to a detention center. And then following this, they're sent to immigration courts. Once here in the immigration court, as I said, there's two potential outcomes. One, they win in their first case, proving citizenship. Or then they can appeal the decision and apply for citizenship in an individual hearing, independent of what ICE is doing. If the immigrant wins in either of these two hearings, they're allowed to remain in the U.S. Legally. If they don't, then ICE determines whether they can be deported based on international law and whether the home country will take them. Currently, there are 3.5 million active cases waiting to be reviewed in immigration courts. That's 3.5 million people waiting to hear the outcome of their deportation cases. This past year, approximately 450,000 cases were reviewed and 140,000 people were deported. Biden's current policies are stopping people at the border and enforcing illegal immigration there instead of targeting illegal immigrants already inside the U.S. So policies at the moment are focusing on the exterior of the U.S. instead of the interior. But right now, looking at the backlog of cases in the courts and the continued trend of hundreds of thousands of border arrivals, clearly the American immigration system is not functioning in a way that is beneficial to everyone or working optimally. The polarized climate has prevented meaningful immigration reform or policy being implemented. This, however, has not stopped activists from pushing for meaningful change. The United States has a history of immigrant activism. In the 2000s, the U.S. has experienced two major waves of protests. The first resulted in one of the largest series of protests in national history in the summer of 2006. So starting in 2001, one of the notable moments was the proposal of the DREAM Act, which would have protected those called dreamers, so the children of undocumented parents or undocumented immigrants who had moved to the U.S. And then brought their children at a young age, so the children were here through no fault of their own. This act did not pass Congress, it was shot down. However, this started a string of immigrant activism that ultimately helped stop the bill H.R. 4437 in 2006. This bill would have increased penalties for illegal migrants, and their push for comprehensive immigration reform in 2005 and 2006 stopped this bill and then began conversations about decreasing anti-immigration sentiment following the September 11, 2001, the attacks of that day, increased national anti-immigrant sentiment. And some of the protests were about reducing that, stopping HR 4437, and then starting to pass comprehensive immigration reform, including things like the DREAM Act. Unfortunately, even though they won big with the ending of this bill, they were not able to make permanent change. The second major wave of protest was the Dreamer movement, which took place later, which was more nationally prominent later in the 21st century. Around 2010 onwards was when it was kind of the biggest. 2012 saw the largest waves of protests in favor of the DREAM Act in its next iteration. The DREAM Act was proposed multiple different times, and each time failed to pass. In 2012, Dreamers, those who were undocumented, came here as youth, staged national sit-ins at former President Obama's campaign offices. So this eventually drew the attention of the Democratic Party, and in 2012, a few days after the national sit-ins began, Obama passes the executive order starting the DACA program, which is called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. This offered temporary relief from deportation for 2 years for eligible childhood arrivals. You could apply repeatedly and keep renewing that 2-year deportation relief period until you're able to achieve citizenship or eventually leave the country. Fortunately, this was a temporary fix, and protests continued, especially during the Trump administration, as he tried to overturn DACA in 2017. This did not pass, and eventually the decision made its way to the Supreme Court, which decided to uphold the program and prevent Trump from overturning DACA. Protests continued through this period, especially following Trump's harsh anti-immigrant rhetoric during his campaign and then his administration. Today, protests continue to push for immigration reform nationally. Just this past week, this being the first week of May 2024, activists in Georgia protested Governor Kemp's signing of a bill requiring police to check inmate citizenship status. A march was staged in Washington advocating for immigrant rights as a Trump campaign event was being held nearby. And protests occurred in Iowa against a law making illegal immigration a state crime. Actions like these are performed by a wide variety of immigrant organizations of differing sizes across the U.S. As these organizations have been around for a while and participated in protests during the DREAM movement and following it during Trump's campaign and during the 2020 presidential election. So some of the major organizations, some of the largest ones include United We Dream, which is a youth-led organization that promotes immigrants' rights and campaigns for undocumented migrants and childhood arrivals. So those that would benefit from the DREAM Act. Another large organization is Unidos US, which is formerly known as the National Council of La Raza. This is the largest Latino nonprofit advocacy organization in the nation. Two other important ones are the Fair Immigration Reform Movement, or FIRM, and then the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union's Immigrant Rights Project. Each of these organizations has local and regional chapters or smaller organizations, and often come together to work on national immigration reform. Organizations use tactics such as government lobbying, staging protests or rallies, educational and awareness campaigns, legal representation programs for those applying for citizenship or going through deportation proceedings, and voter turnout campaigns to push for their goals, mainly immigration reform. National organizations often support and work with local, regional, or regional organizations when preparing actions. Here in Rhode Island, there are plenty of ways to get involved for the fight for immigrant rights and immigration reform. The Immigrant Coalition of Rhode Island encompasses 33 different local groups in the state. It helps coordinate work between these groups, some of the notable ones being the American Civil Liberties of Rhode Island chapter, which includes immigrants' rights as one of its many focuses. Fuerza Laboral is another organization that focuses specifically on workers' rights. The organization is particularly important for the immigrants' rights movement, as they focus on developing community leaders and teaching them to confront and challenge social injustices. Immigrant workers are on the front line for both workers' rights and immigrants' rights campaigns. Another organization is the Dorcas International Institute of Rhode Island that provides services for migrants, including job training, job readiness programs, citizenship and immigration legal services, and aid in overcoming educational, legal, language, and cultural barriers. In addition, it is the only agency in Rhode Island authorized by the Department of State to resettle refugees. Each organization has plenty of volunteer opportunities and different ways for people who care about this issue to get involved and make a difference. Social movements like the immigrants' rights movement build power through solidarity. Political actors create politicized identities and perform actions such as protests to bring people together. One of the most powerful ways undocumented activists have built solidarity is in coming out as undocumented and supporting those that do. Activists that do so show incredible courage and strength to expose themselves to increased vulnerability. Today, I'm going to engage the community to encourage people to donate their time and effort to support the immigrants' rights movement and the solidarity they've built. I have flyers to pass out with the organizations discussed earlier and links to their websites. Most Americans are here as a result of immigrants, and immigrants have always been the foundation of this country. So fixing our immigration system should be a priority for everyone. In discussing the issue today, I think it's important to note that simply securing the border will not fix our immigration system or our large undocumented population. This is because many undocumented Americans are here as the result of visa overstays, and less so from illegal border crossings. Creating more accessible pathways to citizenship and legal migration, along with increasing funds to immigration institutions like immigration courts, instead of border enforcement, will be more effective policies in the long run. Hi, I'm Rory, and you are?
I'm Siddharth.
Siddharth, are any of your immediate relatives immigrants?
Yes, my parents are.
Very cool. Are you interested in getting involved in the immigrants' rights movement?
I would love to.
Perfect. Would you like a flower?
That sounds great.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
All right, I'm here with
Emma.
Emma. Are any of your immediate relatives immigrants?
No.
Are you interested in learning more about immigration reform?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I have a flyer here for you, a couple of quick facts, and then some organizations you can get involved with here in Rhode Island.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
All right, I'm here with Garrett. Garrett, are any of your immediate relatives immigrants?
No.
Do you care about learning about immigration reform?
Yeah.
All right, here's a flyer, and on the bottom there's a couple different organizations you can get involved with in Rhode Island if you'd like. Perfect. Sweet. Thank you. I'm here with
So,
for you, are any of your immediate relatives immigrants?
yes,
Are you interested in learning about immigration reform?
I am indeed.
Perfect. I have this flyer here with a couple of quick facts for you and some organizations you can get involved with in Rhode Island if you'd like.
Wow, thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you, so.
Lovely meeting you.
Nice to meet you too. All right, I'm here with
Makaya. Rachel.
Philip.
All right, do any of you guys have immigrants as immediate relatives?
Yes.
No? Okay. Are you guys interested in learning more about immigration reform?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect. I have flyers with quick facts and then organizations you can get involved with in Rhode Island if you'd like. So I'll give you guys a flyer.
Wow.
This is amazing.
Thank you.
You were doing such great work, Rory.
Perfect.
This is awesome.
Thank you.